Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraye. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 13, text number 50. Chandraka Vishada Smerai Chandraka Vishada Smerai Saruna Panga Vikshitai Sukartanam Ivaraja Satvabhyam Shastrirpalaka. Synonyms: Chandrika Vishada Smirai. By pure smiling like the full, increasing moonlight. Swaarunu Apanga Vikshitai. By the clear glances of their reddish eyes. Swaka Artanam. Of the desires of his own devotees. Iva. Just as. Rajasatvabhyam. By the modes of passion and goodness. Shastripalaka. Were creators and protectors. Translation: those Vishnu forms, by their pure smiling, which resembled the increasing light of the moon, and by the sidelong glances of their reddish eyes, created and protected the desires of their own devotees, as if by the modes of passion and goodness. Please repeat. Those Vishnu forms, by their pure smiling, which resembled the increasing light of the moon, and by the sidelong glances of their reddish eyes, created and protected the desires of their own devotees, as if by the modes of passion and goodness. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Those Vishnu forms blessed the devotees with their clear glances and smiles, which resembled the increasingly full light of the moon. Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. As maintainers, they glanced upon their devotees, embracing them and protecting them by smiling. Their smiles resembled the mode of goodness, protecting all the desires of the devotees, and the glancing of their eyes resembled the mode of passion. Actually, in this verse, the word Raja means not passion, but affection. In the material world, Rajoguna is passion, but in the spiritual world, it is affection. In the material world, affection is contaminated by Rajoguna and Tamoguna, but in the Shuddha Sattva, the affection that maintains the devotees is transcendental. The word Sokartanam refers to great desires. As mentioned in this verse, the glance of Lord Vishnu creates the desires of the devotees. A pure devotee, however, has no desires. Therefore, Sanatana Goswami comments that because the desires of devotees whose attention is fixed on Krishna have already been fulfilled, the Lord's sidelong glances create variegated desires in relation to Krishna and devotional service. In the material world, desire is a product of Rajogun and Tamogun, but desire in the spiritual world gives rise to a variety of everlasting transcendental service. Thus the word Sokartanam refers to eagerness to serve Krishna. In Vrindavan there is a place where there was no temple, but a devotee desired, let there be a temple and seva, devotional service. Therefore, what was once an empty corner has now become a place of pilgrimage. Such are the desires of a devotee. Chandrika Vishadasmirai Saruna Panga Vikshitai Swakartanam Ivaraja Satvabhyam Shastripalaka. Those Vishnu forms, by their pure smiling, which resembled the increasing light of the moon, and by the sidelong glances of their reddish eyes, created and protected the desires of their own devotees, as if by the modes of passion and goodness. This is a verse from, as you already know, the 13th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, but this is when the expansions that Krishna had made of himself and of the calves, after Brahma had stolen them, and then they had gone back to the village, and the residents of Vrindavan had enjoyed the service of their children more than they ever did, because they were actually serving the expansions of the Lord, direct expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who made exact replicas of all the boys that Lord Brahma had stolen. What's more, the calves had been practically devoured by their mothers and fathers, even after they had been weaned away from them, because they were also expansions. And the cows showed so much affection for them that Balaram had then been suspicious that something was going on in Vrindavan. And at that time, he had several theories, one of which was there was some kind of Rakshasi Maya that was pervading the atmosphere and therefore creating such a peculiar situation in the Dham. But Krishna, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can reveal himself in his pastimes to anyone, revealed to Balaram that it was he who had expanded himself into the various forms of calves and cowherd boys, which are now being ravished by the parents. And then when Brahma came to know what had happened, because Krishna revealed to him also the tricks of his pastime, by then manifesting his Vishnu forms. That is, he had already manifested all these boys and calves, but now he showed that they were all directly his expansions. And Brahma then offered his obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then in the 14th chapter he offers his prayers. I picked this particular verse because of the way in which there's smiling and glancing, and these are made much of in this purport, because Srila Prabhupada has given very specific indication of the importance of these, following the Acharyas. All Jiva Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur all have given extensive commentaries on this particular verse, and Prabhupada especially follows Sanatana Goswami's commentary. And at the outset he says that those Vishnu forms bless the devotees with their clear glances and smiles, which resembled the increasingly full light of the moon. And then he quotes, Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. So there's another verse that is from the Stavamala of Srila Rupa Goswami, in which he is invoking and praying for the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in it he says, may the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Lord Sri Chaitanya bestow his causeless mercy upon us. His smiling glance at once drives away all the bereavements of the world, and his very words enliven the auspicious creepers of devotion by expanding their leaves. Taking shelter of his lotus feet invokes transcendental love of God at once. And as most of you know, Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur also gave a verse in which he said, if one simply gets the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya, then the entire material world looks like a place of happiness. And the materialistic philosophies, especially Mayavad, can't affect one. The senses become inert to such a person who has received the favorable glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya. And it leads one to think about how one gets mercy anyway, and what is the process by which one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness. Well, if we make a study of the Bhagavad Gita, we find that Krishna says that it's not by one's own endeavor, but by devotional service. Bhakti mam abhijananti yavanyas chasmi tattvataha. He says only by bhakti. And in other shastras, Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medayana bahuna shrutena yami vaisha vrinute tena labhyas. This verse says that one may become very expert in many ways, expert at speaking and performing austerities, and become very learned, do a lot of hearing, but unless one is chosen by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he won't advance in devotional service. The one who the Lord chooses advances in devotional service. So this is a very personal process, bhakti. And we all have experience of what it means to get a glance. In fact, I study this when I look around the world because I watch people and I watch their interactions, and I like to see what happens between them. And I've noticed that it's dangerous to look at people because there's something even in our glance. What to speak of the glance of Mahavishnu, as the Shastras say, when he looks over the material creation, then it begins to move. Their life is impregnated into the entire material creation. All he does is look at it. That's his glance. In fact, mayadhyakshena prakritihi suyate sacharacharam. Everything starts moving, and mayadhyakshena means it's by the eyes of the Lord. He looks and sees. So what is that? If you're driving down the freeway and you happen to give a sidelong glance to the person next to you, they're like, "Stop looking at me." They might even try to ram you off the road just for looking at them for a second. I always think, what's in a glance? That's a pretty powerful thing. And even oftentimes when we're having seminars, I ask devotees to take a minute and just look into somebody's eyes, even for 1 second. I dare you. And I notice that everyone's uncomfortable. I'm not looking in somebody's eyes. Why? What's in there? Well, there's a soul and there's a super soul. So what must it be to receive the favorable glance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? This is what is being discussed in this verse. The Shreya Kairava Chandrikavitaranam. Just by the favorable glance of Lord Chaitanya, one can become detached from the material world, one can have spiritual knowledge, and one can attain full spiritual success. So, earlier in the Bhagavatam, there's a description of how the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. Actually, as we know in the Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, Krishna goes into a summary of this when he talks about how the material world is reflected form of the spiritual world. And what I find interesting, in the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a discussion of how the internal potency of the Lord, which is categorized in three various energies: Lanini, Samvit, Sandini, and Hladini Shakti. These three potencies, says the Bhagavatam, actually in a commentary in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, then become the influencing factors on the external potency, and the three modes of material nature are like reflections of these three internal energies of the Lord. And this is called Hlada Kari. The material world, although it has the similar variety to the spiritual world, it seems like it should be okay. It seemed like a good idea. In fact, after we read the 3rd and 4th cantos of the Bhagavatam last year in Kartik, just a few months ago, one of the brahmacharis, after hearing about the forest of material enjoyment and the ways in which one can be easily implicated in the material world just by looking around. I would speak of walking around and talking to people. And the story of Puranjana, this happens, it just strikes up a conversation. Next thing you know, he becomes a woman in his next life. I mean, so many things happen just by moving around the material world. And so the brahmachari, after hearing extensively for 5 hours a day from the Bhagavatam, went to his guru and he said, who was there at the ashram, and he said, "What was I thinking?" Yeah, that's the point. Oh, what was I thinking when I thought I'd walk around the material world and look at stuff? And people look back at me, and next thing you know, I'm transmigrating from one miserable situation to another. So Hlada Tapakari means that the pleasure potency of the spiritual world, which is ever increasing, becomes pervertedly manifest in the material world as the three modes of material nature, and it becomes endlessly troublesome for the living entity. Whereas in the spiritual world, the glances bring happiness and eternal pleasure, and that energy is forever encouraging and full of happiness. In the material world, that perverted energy, which comes out as a three modes of material nature, is the cause of suffering for the living entity. And the same pleasure potency that the living entity has in the spiritual world, when such a living entity tries to exhibit that in the material world, that becomes the source of the jiva's suffering. Hlada tapa kari. It sounds like getting hit on the finger, on the thumb with a hammer while you're hammering. Hlada tapa kari. At least it sounds like that to me. And the experience of the material world is very similar to that. So, the purpose of bhakti is to act in such a way as to attract the favorable glance of the Lord. And fortunately, for everyone in this Kali Yuga, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared, and he had many reasons for coming. First of all, it was the time to spread the Yuga Dharma, but even a jiva can do that. And most often, the Yuga Dharma is spread by an empowered jiva. But in this Kali Yuga, the Lord wanted to come for internal reasons, and therefore he came at the same time. So Krishna manifested as the Yuga avatar, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And anyone who joins in to the same movement that he started 500 years ago at Srivasangam and takes up the process that he enumerated through his disciples, the 6 Goswamis, which is very detailed, and it's also summarized. Not only is there a detailed description of how to follow it, but there's also a summary study of how to follow it. You can even do the abbreviated version. And by doing that, one can very easily attract the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And by doing that, one becomes naturally inclined towards bhakti. One becomes naturally disinclined towards the material world, which is extremely useful, a habit to develop. And we see, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu moved about the world, even upon meeting the most formidable of philosophical opponents like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was the most learned person in India, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was just a youth, or as Prabhupada writes in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, he was a lad. And when he met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he favored him by his glance, and he sat with him. And this is one of the traits of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's known as Jananivasa. He moves amongst the people as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He'll still sit with you and listen. And he did so in the case of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and bestowed his full blessings upon the Acharya, so much so that he became a lover of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even whereas before he was attracted to impersonalism. Afterwards, after meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he abhorred the impersonal conception of the Lord so much that he wanted to change the Bhagavatam, the 10.8.14. It sounded too much like liberation, the kind that he now hated, and the kind which before he liked, before he got the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And other heavyweights at the time, like Brahmananda Bharati. One of the stories I particularly like in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here in Puri is meeting various devotees, and he's walking with Mukunda, one of his devotees, and Mukunda announces that Brahmananda Bharati is nearby. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited perfect etiquette towards the senior devotees, and Brahmananda Bharati was among them. In fact, he's mentioned as one of the main trunks of the Chaitanya tree. He's a highly learned person, but he had been involved in impersonal philosophy, Mayavad. And now, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard that Brahmananda Bharati was there, and Mukunda said, I'll bring him, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, that's not proper. He's my spiritual master, therefore I should go to him. And so they went to Brahmananda Bharati, they met, and Mukunda said, here is Brahmananda Bharati, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you must be mistaken. This is not Brahmananda Bharati. Because at the time, Brahmananda Bharati was wearing a deer skin. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu detected, because he's omniscient, that Brahmananda Bharati had put on the deer skin out of a sense of false prestige. Just like we used to do as brahmacharis, whenever there was some new way to look more like an austere yogi, we would take it up. For instance, I remember that one of the swamis had discovered in South India that sometimes yogis wear a chain around their waist, and that's how they tie their kolpins. They used to have a chain. So we went out and got chains too. I remember the first night sleeping on the train, and I think, I don't know how this works out for everybody else, but it's not so comfortable. And that there was a sense that I got a chain on, so I'm advanced in devotional service. So Brahmananda Bharati had some idea that I'm wearing a deer skin, therefore I'm a great advanced transcendentalist. And Mahaprabhu said to Mukunda, I don't see Brahmananda Bharati, because Brahmananda Bharati would never wear a deer skin. You must be mistaken. And so Brahmananda Bharati could understand. He thought within himself, oh yes, Mahaprabhu is correct, because I did put this on for false prestige. So then when Brahmananda Bharati changed his mind and he decided, I shouldn't do this, Mahaprabhu immediately called for some sannyasi robes, and Brahmananda Bharati put them on. And then a discussion ensued between Brahmananda Bharati and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where Brahmananda Bharati glorified Lord Chaitanya as the moving Brahman and Lord Jagannath as the stationary Brahman. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu objected because on the grounds that he was playing the part of an ordinary jiva. And he said, this is not correct. And back and forth they argued until finally he asked, did Brahmananda Bharati, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, to negotiate the argument. And finally, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted defeat. And he said it is proper to accept defeat at the feet of one's spiritual master. He was indicating Brahmananda Bharati. And in this case, Brahmananda Bharati then said, but I was a hardcore Mayavadi. But because of the glance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, my heart changed. And now I've become attracted to devotional service. So the interactions that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has with his devotees, as we'll read in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, are still going on today by the representatives of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the same as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's no difference. And those who go out and represent Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by chanting Hare Krishna, as an example, may attract the minds and hearts of everyone who hears it. This is synonymous with receiving the glance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When people come and they hear Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, they get a curious look on their face, as if they're not sure what's happening to them. And they're not sure if they should allow themselves to be carried away by this very enticing energy that they've encountered. We watch them oftentimes, don't we, when we're doing the Harinam Sankirtan, and can be at any country of the world. Some cultures are more reserved, and they try to hold themselves back more, and other people just go crazy. And it's something that can't be denied, and it is the manifestation of the Supreme Lord through the holy name, which is the same, Prabhupada said, as the flute song of Krishna, and is the same as the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And all the other ways in which, when we go out and interact with people representing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we'll find the same ways in which people become changed by coming in contact with the Krishna consciousness movement, which is a manifestation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And now we'll take a couple of reflections before we go on to the next part of our program. A reflection just means anything that you heard in the verse or purport or in the monologue that stuck in your mind. Navina and then Ananda Murari. We have a microphone here, and the reason it's important to keep the microphone right up by your chin and talk into it is because this is being live streamed, and the audience will become very angry with us when they see people's mouths moving and they have no idea what they're saying.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. One glance can change your life.
Yeah, one glance can change your life. So the devotees are working naturally to receive the favorable glance of the spiritual master, of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yes.
I'm reading in the second canto right now, approaching and reading the Chatur Shloki of the Bhagavatam. And there's one very sweet verse where it says that the Lord was leaning favorably towards Lord Brahma. And then there's been many purports sequentially where Srila Prabhupada has been speaking about the importance of the Vaishnavas and getting the mercy of the Vaishnavas. And I was also appreciating this Janani Vas, that another name of... Well, I was just thinking that Krishna walks amongst the people, and he also walks amongst the people as his devotees. Like he sends his Vaishnavas, and it gives us access to Krishna so much deeper because the Vaishnavas.
Yeah. So, hi, we're here. Who are you? We're representatives of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You came to your house today. This is representing this Jananivasa, the walking amongst the people. What else? Yes.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yes.
In the purport, Srila Prabhupada was explaining how in the material world, Rajagun is expressed as passion, whereas in the spiritual realm, it's expressed as affection. Could you expand on that?
It was much of what I was saying about the way in which the pleasure energy of the spiritual world becomes pervertedly manifest in the material world. And so, in the commentaries to this verse, which I looked at, Prabhupada's following Sanatana Goswami, and he says just what it says here, and that is that what is Raja means passion, but in the context of, in the spiritual world, it means affection. So we can take it in the context of Hlada Tapakari. There's a way in which the energies of the spiritual world, the internal potency, then when entering into the material world, then becomes oppositely manifest. And what's beneficial in the spiritual world becomes detrimental in the material world. Just as much as there's a description of love and lust in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. One is described, they said they're both metals, but love is gold and lust is iron. So there's the same kind of metaphor there and juxtaposition of the two concepts. It's like that, only it's not absolutely precise, because in one of the commentaries I looked at it, there were variances to the. So this is one of the ways in which the acharyas have presented it.
So is that the way in which we transform our passion?
Yes. In fact, Prabhupada mentions in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in the section in which Arjuna is asking how to overcome material desires, and Lord Krishna talks about how kama is the eternal enemy of the soul, it burns like fire and so forth. He describes how it's become strategically located in the various parts of our bodies, a mind, intelligence, and senses, and so forth. And then Prabhupada very specifically mentions how the process of devotional service is to transform lust into love. And then there he says, even a latecomer can do this. It's a little harder. If you have a head start, you can do it much more easily. But this is the process of devotional service, of transforming. It's the same energy, but when it's purified. As mentioned in the Bhagavatam, Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yad Iyate Tatra Puman Uphavrita. When one becomes uncovered from the modes of material nature, then naturally one's propensity to love Krishna and seeing Krishna becomes available. Otherwise, we only see the material forms. We experience material lust. There was one more over here. Yes, Malati, right behind you.
Just, you were talking about designations, like we're a representative. It reminded me of the newspaper article in Butler, Pennsylvania, 5 days after Srila Prabhupada arrived, and they called him the ambassador of Bhakti Yoga.
The ambassador of Bhakti Yoga. Yeah, and he walked around. He went and sat in the park, and he looked at people, they looked at him, and was like, okay, Hare Krishna. Everywhere he went. And then he sent people out to look at people also. And they could get a look at them. And oftentimes we find this. It's such a profound way in which the Krishna consciousness movement transforms people's lives. It's not that there's the philosophy does it, that's one aspect. But people, when they see devotees, they notice something different. One of our devotees in Dallas, Texas, was taking an English class. And she kept noticing that the teacher was different from anyone she'd ever been around. So she screwed up her courage one day and went up after one of the classes and said, I hope you don't mind if I ask you a personal question. He said, oh, please go ahead. You're really different. What is it about you? He said, oh, I'm a Hare Krishna devotee. I don't know if it was that abrupt, because most people in professional circumstances don't, but I'm giving you the summary. And she said, what's that? And she came to the temple, and then she saw Sri Radha Kalachandji, she saw the devotees, she became transformed, but she had noticed something special about this devotee, Rupanuga Prabhu, who was teaching the class. And just by seeing him and being seen by him, and then being seen by the deities when she came to the temple, her life was fully transformed. Any other things? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you. You mentioned that the material energy in the form of the 3 modes of material nature, I believe you said that they're expansions of the Ladini Shakti, and also you mentioned Samvit and Sandini.
Yeah.
I think I've heard somewhere where there's also there's Sandi, I don't know what they mean, but Sandini, Sanvit, and then there's also something called Samyogini. At least could you explain what Samvit and Sandini mean?
Well, Samvit has to do with the knowledge potency of the Lord. Sandini has to do with the manifestation of the forms and the infrastructure of the spiritual world. And Hladini means the pleasure potency of the Lord. So these are all these are definitions of the 3 categories of the Lord's energy. I just want to read you the excerpt since you brought it up, because it's such a profound concept. This is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila 462, for those of you who are keeping score. Each of the three divisions of the internal potency, the Sandhini, Samvit, and Hladini energies, influence one of the external potencies by which the conditioned souls are conducted. Such influence manifests the three qualitative modes of material nature, proving definitely that the living entities, the marginal potency, are eternally servitors of the Lord and are therefore controlled by either the internal or the external potency. Our judges, Satyadev Prabhu, very sober face today. He's one of our judges. Will you accept that? He accepts it. Let the record show Satyadev Prabhu has accepted. Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that when I was reading the Bhagavatam, I came across a couple verses in quite different parts. It was like something like 3rd canto and 11th canto or something. But one of the verses said that just by seeing a sadhu, one gets more purification than they can get, or more spiritual benefit than they can get by visiting all the tirthas and bathing in all the sacred rivers. And then another verse says that just by a sadhu seeing you, you can get all the benefits of bathing in all the sacred rivers and attending all the tirthas. And I just found it really reassuring because, thinking, okay, sometimes might be thinking I'm such a hopeless case, but even if the devotees just look at me, right, or even if I just look at them, and it's also very nice exhibition of Krishna's, eagerness to help everybody. That he gives the facility that just if they see a sadhu, then they make spiritual advancement, or even if they just are seen by a sadhu, even if they don't even notice a sadhu, but the sadhu just sees them. So I found that very reassuring, and
it lends new meaning to. Oftentimes people say, "Good to see you," and someone will say, "It's good to be seen." And this was also Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's way of describing what darshan means, that we're not going to see the deity as much as we're going to be seen by the deity. In fact, this was one of the foundational points of his teachings, and that was that we shouldn't try to see God at all, but we should try to act in such a way that he will want to see us. Nirakula.
Talking about the glances, I was remembering one of my memories of Srila Prabhupada was when he came to New Dwarka for the first time that we had opened the new temple room, and there was a balcony there, and a lot of the women were up in the balcony, and so Prabhupada went and he paid his obeisances to the deities, and then he kind of circled around. As he circled around, he looked up to the balcony, and that glance of Prabhupada, I remember it, and you've heard devotees talk about this, that when Prabhupada looked at you, it was like he looked right, he was looking at your soul. And I remember that glance went right to my heart. And many years later, I saw the video of that, when Prabhupada was in the temple room. And it was momentary, that glance. But when it happened, it felt like it rested for such a long time, and it had such a deep effect on me that I still am reaping the benefits of that glance.
Yes, very much so. And please go ahead.
I was just very much appreciating the verse that you picked. I just found it extremely relevant because this morning at Mangal Artik at Toda Gopinath Mandir, I was just really relishing the fact that we were so fortunate to be there and have the opportunity to have the merciful glance of Toda Gopinath fall upon us. It was such a wonderful
experience. Nice point. I was thinking of the verse too when we were in there. And I find it to be very encouraging as well, because there's a way that oftentimes life seems to be a little challenging. Anyone? Yes. Yeah, and just the cultivating the understanding of how compassionate Krishna is. I've been reading the 7th canto and how he's available to everybody, and he's also all good. for the demons, for the devotees, his just being in the proximity of the Lord is all auspicious. And keeping that in mind, that if one does the best that one can to stay within the purview of the Lord, that is, with to cultivate a favorable attitude, to be humble, try to serve the devotees, the Lord will notice it. He always does, and it doesn't matter where you are in the creation. You can be in the most forsaken place in the whole world. But if you take up a sincere attitude and decide to serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then he'll notice you. And not only does he notice you, but he'll also promote you in serving him in the Sankirtan movement. It's his arrangement that devotees become promoted spiritually, and they're given more service as well. And Prabhupada mentions this several times, that it's like a corporation. And just as those in a corporation, when they're noticed because they're doing good work, you hear the proverbial person who starts in the mailroom and then ends up as the CEO. This is due to the work ethic and the attitude and so forth. One more?
Hare Krishna. It's encouraging to hear that that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement is not different from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
That's right. And Prabhupada mentions in the Adi Lila that the ISKCON is one of the branches of the Chaitanya tree. So you can be very confident that you're connected to the Chaitanya tree by cooperating with the movement that Srila Prabhupada started. I've found that it's the easiest thing to do. There's a lot of ways in which one can try to triangulate and find out an inner track or a better way. But if one's just, like sometimes I'll put something together. Like the other day someone gave me some contraption for the greenhouse, and I thought I'll just set it up, and I thought, no, I won't. I'll just look at the directions and follow it. And then life was a lot easier. I'll just go through like a complete neophyte and follow the directions so I don't mess it up. And in a similar way, simply sticking with the simple presentation that Srila Prabhupada's given, and I've found that the mind can become disturbed thinking that I need something else, I need something more. However, if one enters deeply within what one already has, for instance, the ISKCON morning program, it seems too simple. There's no pranayama, and there's no, I don't know, but if when I go into various temples around the world, and my mind thinks they should be more like this or more like that, on the other hand, I simply merge into the program and say, I'm just going to be one with this program, then I start feeling happy, and I realize the profundity of the entire presentation that's given. So ISKCON is a branch, and one can get the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no doubt, by taking full shelter of the process. It's very clear and simple. And speaking of clear and simple, now it's time for product placement and a word from our sponsors. We have now, due to the hard work of several devotees headed by Nagar Kirtan Prabhu, who's right over here, he's hardest working brahmachari in ISKCON. And we now have these language cards. Last year we had them too, but they were scribbled on little pieces of paper and so forth. But these are professionally done, or professionally for India. Actually, they look pretty good. They were laminated here just last night. You can have either lamentation or lamination. And we choose lamination. So laminate your life. Get some shlokas. These are unusual shlokas because these are shlokas that will help you distribute books. For instance, this one is in Bengali. Kripa kori dandin. Everyone say, Kripa kori dandin. Kripa kori dandin. It sounds like a Madanga mantra. Kripa kori dandin. Kripa kori dandin. And I can testify, and let me testify. It's easier to distribute books if you don't know the language of the other person. It's easier. Because if you know a little language, it's a dangerous thing. You'll mess it up. Not only that, people take advantage of you because they'll go, he knows a little language. I'll pretend like I don't understand him. But when it's written on a card and they can tell it was well researched and laid out, and you hand them the card, there's no getting away. It's either yes or no, and it's usually yes, especially here in the Dham. We found that last year. So we've got your Bengali cards. We've got your Oriya cards. We have your Hindi cards. This should suffice for 99% of the people that you'll meet. We also have huge stacks of books, 5,000 to be exact. And as they say in the industry, everything must go. No book left behind. We're going to inundate the Dham with these shastras, which is not a difficult thing because the people are the most pious in the whole world. In fact, those who have the vision know that they have 4 arms. So this is book distribution on training wheels. It's very easy. All you have to do in the Dham, and I'll just teach you the technique that we learned last year. May I do this? Yes. Put them down. Down. Now I have to pick the right book. I need a Bengali book. Here's Bangla. Ami Bangla boli. Ananda Murari will. So here's how anybody can distribute a book here in the Holy Dham. Now you approach somebody, and if you can make eye contact with them, there's the glance. Now observe. I just took off my shoes. And here in Arissa, when you take your shoes off, that means something big's going to happen. And it's spiritual. And so what will happen is when you kick your shoes off in front of somebody, you approach them and you go like this, they'll kick their shoes off. And then all you have to do is hand them the book, and then hand them the card like this. And as he's reading, you can see, Kripa Kori Dandin. They look at the card, and now watch what he's going to do. Please note that he's digging in his pocket. He has just given me some rupees, which I'm appreciating. And now I'm handing him some prasadam, and we have 5,000 prasadam lollipops offered to the Lord. And we also have Jagannath stickers, several thousand, that will also give to the recipient. And then you can thank them very much. Thank you very much. And Hare Krishna. That's how simple it is. And so we have cards for the distributors. There'll be special bags packed up. That's and then you just have to, all you have to do is learn which book goes with which language. You can match them up. What's that? Well, that is where you have to do a little work. You can do it by trial and error. If you show them this one, they go like that. Then you just show them the next one. Then you give them until you run into the right one. And there's only 3, and so it's a high percentage guess. It's mentioned inside the book as well. There you have it. In English, it's written what language it's in. Any other questions? Yes, Prabhu. Here comes the mic.
Hindi aata hai, Bengali aata hai, Oriya aata hai. That means, do you speak Hindi aata hai? Do you speak Hindi? Aata hai, does Hindi aata hai means come to you? Bengali aata hai, Oriya aata hai.
Okay, write that down. And you can collect little mantras as you go, and then when you become well equipped, then you'll find that it can spread in different ways. And now we have a few announcements from Shraddha Devi Dasi about the way today is going to go. And thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.